Hey everyone, praise, honor, and glory to the Most High God. So I'm back with a message. This message has been on my mind to speak of for a while, but I guess this is the time for me to speak on it. I knew I was going to speak on it, I just didn't know when. So I was looking at some events. Some of you may already know another shooting took place in Florida, a high school shooting, which a 19-year-old young man, I'm sorry. But yeah, I was thinking of something. Yeah. A 19-year-old man, he killed about 17 students and he injured about 14, maybe 15 of the students. He was a young man who was a former student there. He had gotten expelled and then he came back and, just shot the school up. There's another story that I heard recently in which this wife, she not only killed her husband, she killed her children and then she killed herself. They were former Jehovah's Witnesses and they got out of that, the religion being a Jehovah's Witness. And their religion teaches to shun people, to excommunicate yourself from the individuals if they choose to leave the faith. And they had other family that was in, the religion of being a Jehovah's Witness, and their family shunned them. And it's reported that they believe that religion caused, that situation to occur where the woman shot her husband and killed kids and herself. And although there were a lot of other issues that were going on within her lives, they do believe that was partially responsible for why she did the things that she did. Which is why I am making this message. Are we partially responsible for creating murders? Now, as you know, I hear a lot of these stories all the time. But when I heard these stories, I have to be honest, I did find myself getting a little angry. Of course, I know when it comes to people not being in Christ, there's only so much that a person can do, but I got angry because hearing those situations kind of triggered something in me. It triggered past anger from situations that I have personally been through, in which I have been put in certain situations, whether like being excommunicated or bullied or whatever the situation may have been. And it caused a lot of pain. It angered me. If I could just be quite honest, it pissed me off, everyone. So, just being honest. But I found myself getting mad and I had to calm down. Thanks to God, he calmed me down, and I yielded to the Lord. I said, you know what, Lord, I'm going to choose to love because I don't want to be like that. I don't. And it got me to thinking, are we partially responsible for creating murders? Now, as you know, we all have to be responsible for our own actions. We cannot go around playing the blame game as to why people act the way that they act, why people do the things that they do. And let me state for the record, this is more so a video for those of you who are in the faith, because if you're an individual, you're not in the faith and you're watching this, I don't know, you may not agree with some things, and I can understand from your viewpoint if you're not really into the things of God, so I'm just letting you know ahead of time. But, we all have to be responsible for our own actions. And also understanding, too, that we as people, we do have a part to play in some things that goes on. So you don't want to get to a point to where you are playing the blame game. But looking at the situation for what it really and truly is. Now, with the young man who shot up the school, people don't just get up all of a sudden and say, hey, I'm going to shoot up the school. For something like that to have occurred, something has already been planted within him. Somebody planted that seed or something, because it could have been, the enemy. He plants seeds, he waters it, and then he tries to do the increase, just the same as God. God, one plants, another waters, God does the increase. It's the same thing with darkness. Usually what I've noticed with people who have been used in situations such as that to perform mass killings or to even go that far, though I've noticed they all have a common goal. I mean, not a common goal. They all share, similarities. They are individuals who I've noticed they probably experienced some serious hurt or some serious rejection or hatred from people within their lives, and the enemy just went haywire with that. Now, the young man, he made known who shot up the school, how demons were putting things within his mind, or he kept hearing voices telling him to do this and do that. As you know, the spirit of murder will do that. When you open up the door for hatred to come into your heart, you invite the devil in. The devil will try to put thoughts in your mind to do things like that, and you have to make the choice as to whether or not you're going to act upon it or not. Some people are so tormented to where they go that far to where they unfortunately will partake in something like that. with others, it may not be that extreme. And it really got me to thinking, we as the believers who are supposed to be showing the love of Christ to people, whether regardless how fruitful you may be, because we all are not that fruitful. We are on different levels in bearing fruit. Some people bear fruit 100 per measure, some 30 per measure, some 60 per measure. But are we partially responsible for creating murders? It got me to thinking, if we, of course, as people, it's only so much that we alone can do, because we can't do everything for people. In order to really help a person, that person that you're trying to help has to first come into agreement with even wanting help. But if that person does not want help, say they don't want to change, and it's only so much that you can do. Sometimes you have to help from a distance, sometimes just not at all, depending on the circumstances of the situation. And it got me to thinking, if we all did what we could to really love the people, as Christ calls us to, how many deaths, how many attacks could we really stop or we could prevent if we just loved, Now, of course, you don't want to be foolish with things. I'm not saying go out there and just put yourself in harm's way. Of course, you are to be led by the Holy Spirit, but it just really got me to thinking, we go through things, we witness to things, and sometimes we may not be no different than somebody who may go out and commit murder. And this may ruffle up some feathers with some of you all, but it's a self-examination. We look at people, who go out and kill people and murder people. And the number one thing we do is we get so mad and say, oh, this person don't deserve to live. This person is so evil and wicked. But sometimes you may not be any different than that murderer who went out to go murder someone. The difference is they physically did it. You may be doing it spiritually, because as you know, being in the faith, when it comes to serving the Lord, if you commit a sin in your heart, that's still sin. You don't have to physically go out and do something to commit a sin, because the Lord, he does look at the heart. If you have hatred in your heart towards somebody, that is considered murder. You know different than a physical murder, to tell you the truth, in that aspect. It gets that deep. We get put in situations so we can be more compassionate to those who may not be that lovable. If we all did something to shine a little light or something, perhaps maybe saying a hi, giving a person a compliment, and especially doing as we're led to do, or the Lord putting the love within us to do, I wonder how many things could we really get accomplished. The harvest being plentiful, but very few laborers. It's really things to reflect upon, within our own walk. It is so easy to, you got to think, we are really no different if we choose to yield to the hatred, if we choose to yield to the darkness and wanted to dislike and hate a person, because we know that our real enemy is in the spirit. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but we wrestle against principalities, forces of darkness, rulers of the darkness of this world, spiritual wickedness in high places. Holding grudges, it's just as bad as someone who went out there to physically do something. And it is something that you have to keep renewing your mind to. It is a mind renewal, and it is a wake-up call too. Each situation that we go through, like if we really sat back and we understood why people act the way that they act and do the things that they do, maybe we'll get more of an understanding. When we get more of an understanding as far as why people do the things that they do, it does help us to love the people more. Keeping your guard up, because of course you need to guard your heart with the word of God, but reflect upon that. It is so huge. Sometimes when you're hurt and you're already in your own darkness, it can be easy to want to yield to darkness and take your problems out on other people, to take darkness out, to take darkness out on others. And we have to get to a point to where it ain't about us. We want to break the cycle of darkness. We don't want this stuff to keep occurring. If we just did our part, maybe, just maybe, that could be enough to hinder the plans of the enemy. It could be enough to save some souls. Unconditional love, of course, the Lord that was enough power to save us, believing on him with the things that he did. And we are called to live by that example. Of course, as I said, we as people, we can only do so much, because we can't do anything apart from Christ. Sometimes people try to manipulate you in that aspect, but A self-examination. Are we partially responsible? We do have a little hand to play in that when you think about it, everyone. Because as believers in the Lord, the only thing that we owe people is love. We don't owe them anything else but love. And there's different ways to love a person. You don't necessarily mean you have to love a person up close. Sometimes you love a person in prayer. You love a person by releasing them and letting them get themselves together. However the Lord lead. But it's different ways to love people. But it is also a way we can go about doing things too. It's one thing to be submitted to the Lord, and it's another thing to be surrendered. You know, you can do the things that the Lord have called you to do, and you can do it in the wrong spirit. You can do it with the wrong attitude. But really being surrendered and your heart's circumcised in the Lord really helps to do the job effectively, because it's not you who's doing it, but it's the love of Christ working through you to help someone and being able to do that work. And that's the goal we need to get to. Nothing wrong with being obedient to the Lord. In fact, we're all called to be obedient. But even in the midst of you being obedient, also making sure that your heart is surrendered to where the love of Christ is actually in you to do these things that you're doing. Because sometimes things can go wrong when we're trying to obey the Lord and we're not really that fruitful. You know, sometimes we end up projecting more darkness on people as opposed to projecting the light. But a self-examination, people. It is a serious self-examination. We don't really take those things into account with the things that we do. Really some serious edification, a wake-up call, because being in this dark world, until we as the believers could, really change and do our parts, it's only going to get colder and colder. But with all things, what's impossible with man is possible with God. So with that being said, it's still hope, obviously, We just gotta be the light. We're the salt and the light. So, something to reflect upon. Some things that have been on my mind. Self-examination for me as well. Obviously, y'all. So, I thank you for listening. Much love. Peace be with you, and God bless.